Hello students, in the previous video we have seen about the types of immunity. Now today let us talk about the one more topic, that is adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity, how can you define the adaptive immunity? What are the factors that are involved in adaptive immunity? For all these questions we are going to find out the answers. The immunological resistance which is developed by the individual throughout the life after the birth is known as acquired immunity. So today our concept is the adaptive immunity. So what is our today's concept? Adaptive immunity. Now let us see some introduction points regards adaptive immunity. Now adaptive immunity is a pathogen specific immunity, whereas innate immunity is not pathogen specific, it is non-specific. Now adaptive immunity has prior and depends upon the contact with microbes or microorganisms, hence it is known as the immunological memory type of adaptive immunity. So the adaptive immunity is dependent upon the microorganisms. So whenever these microorganisms enters into the body or body cells, there are some certain kind of cells which can recognize these microbes and can store the information about those microbes. So do you know, based upon these cells called memory cells, nowadays vaccination process was well developed, immunization techniques were well developed by these memory cells or the cells of adaptive immunity. Now let us talk about adaptive immunity. It is again of two types. Based upon the nature, adaptive immunity generally classified into two types. What are they? First type of immunity is passive immunity. Next type of immunity is active immunity. What is passive immunity? What is active immunity? Let us see. The major cells which are involved in the adaptive immunity is T cells and B cells. Already I said to you about T cells, T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, which are representing antigen cells in our body. Now, even the antigen representing cells are also one of the type of this cells. Now, adaptive immunity, which is depending upon three different types of cells, T cells, B cells and antigen representing cells. Let us see about lymphocytes. Nothing but T lymphocytes or T cells. T lymphocytes or T cells. T cells are nothing but T lymphocytes. So T lymphocytes, based upon the size, the lymphocytes can be divided into small lymphocytes and large lymphocytes. Do you know? The small lymphocytes, which includes T cells and B cells, large lymphocytes, which includes large granular lymphocytes and natural killer cells. Here let us see how this B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes looks like. If you see the B lymphocytes, let us talk about first B lymphocytes. B lymphocytes. Suppose imagine these are B lymphocytes. Let us learn the functions of this B lymphocytes. The B lymphocytes capable of producing antibodies. Do you know? The B lymphocytes can produce the antibodies against a pathogen, specific pathogen, and can capture circulating of antigens. These are called as the B cells. Here the B cells are produced from the system of stem cells. There are some certain kind of stem cells which are seen in our body. These stem cells generally produces the B lymphocytes, especially in the bone marrow of adult mammals, bursa of Fabricus in birds, and the liver of fetus generally produces these B lymphocytes. Now, the B lymphocytes, mature B cells or B lymphocytes, synthesized various types of antibodies which are displayed especially When they are active, then only they can produce the antibodies. If they are not active, they cannot produce the antibodies. So at what time they are going to activate, what are the various factors which influences the activation of this B cells, let us see. Here, when they are active, they are able to produce the antibodies. If the antibodies are produced, the antibodies produces plasma membrane cells. These plasma cells are plasma cells which are later on going to produce specific antibodies required for killing various germs. The mature B cells are later on generally stored in the lymphatic tissue or lymphoid organs. These mature B cells are also known as immunocompetent cells. What are they called? Immunocompetent cells. This mature immune competent B cells reaches the secondary lymphoid organs or secondary lymphoid tissue, and there in the secondary lymphoid tissue they are going to develop into functional cells. The functional cells which later on lived into or transforms into long lived memory cells. So let us mark here long lived memory cells. Long lived memory cells. These long lived memory cells which are active cells which are participating in the adaptive immunity. These kind of long lived memory cells which produces antibodies against some disease causing pathogens. Now these long lived memory cells, they can store the information against the disease causing pathogens if they enters into our body. Here the long lived memory cells later on transforms into effector plasma cells. This effector plasma cells finally produces antibodies specific to particular antigen. So mark it. Now the memory cells which can stores the information and shows quick response. So what is the specific function of this memory cell? Suppose here you can see a kind of memory cells. What are the functions of these memory cells? Are there any specific functions given or allotted for this memory cells? This memory cells stores the information against all kind of pathogens. Now T cells, if you see T lymphocytes, T cells nothing but T lymphocytes. T cells are nothing but T lymphocytes. The T lymphocytes that are not capable of finding or producing antibodies, which means they cannot recognize the free circulating antigens in our body, hence these are called as a T cells. So what are the reasons why they cannot find the free circulating antigen? They do not have that resistance power, so that's why they are unable to find out the antibodies against free circulating antigens. So these are produced, but these are produced in the bone marrow of humans and reach the thymus gland. Thymus gland is a lymphatic organ. We know that. Thymus gland is located on the top of the heart as a cap-like structure, and thymus gland act as a lymphatic tissue, secondary lymphatic organ. Here, when these cells are transformed or transported to the lymphatic organ, they will be differentiated into mature T cells. So whenever they reach the thymus gland, so let me show you a reaction here. Suppose this is a thymus gland. Now the thymus gland receives the T cells or T lymphocytes. Whenever this T cells enters into this thymus gland, here the T cells undergoes for differentiation or development process. After differentiation, they will transforms into an active T cells, an active immune mature cells. So these are immunocompetent T cells in the secondary lymphatic organs or secondary lymphatic tissue. They transforms into functional T cells. Now, on exposure to antigen, these T functional T cells undergoes for uh, undergoes for certain kind of reactions and produces two different types of cells. They are TH cells and TC cells. So, which are nothing but memory cells and effector cells. Now, if you see carefully on the surface of T cells, if you carefully see, there are some certain kind of glycoprotein molecules are present. These glycoprotein molecules are cluster, a group, and undergoes for differentiation process and produces different molecules. Now, let me say one more important point. Based upon the glycoprotein molecules, the T cells are two types, CD4 cells and CD8 cells. What are the two types of cells that are seen in the on the surface of these T lymphocytes, which are mature T lymphocytes or T cells? Now, compact cluster of differentiation 4 cells, cluster of differentiation 8 cells or T8 cells we can call them as. Now, based on the functions, T cells are of two types. What are they? TH cells and TC cells. TC cells are nothing but T cytotoxic cells. Now, monocytes and macrophages, if you carefully see, these two are also, and even the dendritic cells are also bearers of CD4 markers. Now, these CD4 markers are CD8 markers, CD8 plus markers, which plays a key role in the adaptive immunity. Now, here if you carefully see the T helper cells, what do you mean by T helper cells? TH cells. So, the T immunocompetent cells or T immunocompetent cells, nothing but the active T immune cells classified into two types based upon their nature and functions. First type of cells are TH cells or helper cells. Second type of cells are cytotoxic cells or TC cells. These helper cells are also known as CD4 cells or CD4 positive cells. So, what are they called? CD4 positive cells. Now, here they are of T cells that play an important role in the immune system, particularly in the adaptive immunity. They are playing a key role in adaptive immunity. Now, most probably helper cells are most important cells in adaptive immunity as they are required for almost all adaptive immune responses. So, for all kind of adaptive immune responses, the T helper cells plays an important role. What do you mean by helper? Someone which can support. These T helper cells which supports the immunocompetence or adaptive immune system. They are not only help but activates B lymphocytes. Do you know? The T helper cells activates B lymphocytes in some certain cases to secrete antibodies. By activating B cells, they secrete the antibodies and macrophages to destroy ingested microbes. Now, here the cells which are involved in the rejection of transplanted tissue, it is because of T helper cells by secreting the gamma interferons. So, gamma interferons are the cells which can reject the unknown transplanted tissue. If suppose during kidney transplantation, heart transplantation, they undergoes for testing, histological testings occurs. During this histopathological diagnosis, if the blood group or if the tissues are not matching with our body, what will happen? They won't transfer the heart transplantation. They won't transfer the heart, or they won't transfer the kidneys because of this reason called T helper cells. And antigen presenting cells. Let us talk about third type of cells. Antigen representing cells is an immune cell that detects, engulfs, informs the immune system, especially the adaptive immune system. So antigen representing cells, they undergoes for sequence of phagocytic reactions and can kill or eradicate the pathogens. Not only this antigen presenting cells identifies the pathogens first, whichever present in our body. Now, here each and every cell in our body, immune cell, which plays a key role in the immunity. The immune system contains three types of antigen representing cells. What are they? First type macrophages, second type dendritic cells, and third one B cells. Clear? I hope so everybody enjoyed the session, students. We will meet in the next session once again. Thank you. Have a nice day.